The China Report for Saturday, June 8, 2013. China and Iraq oil boom. Since the American-led invasion of 2003, Iraq has become one of the world's top oil producers, and China is now its biggest customer. China already buys nearly half the oil that Iraq produces, nearly 1.5 million barrels a day, and is angling for an even bigger share, bidding for a stake now owned by ExxonMobil in one of Iraq's largest oil fields. The Chinese are the biggest beneficiary of this post-Saddam oil boom in Iraq, said Deniz Natali, a Middle East expert at the National Defense University in Washington. They need energy, and they want to get into the market. Before the invasion, Iraq's oil industry was sputtering, largely walled off from world markets by international sanctions against the government of Saddam Hussein, so his overthrow always carried the promise of renewed access to the country's immense reserves. Chinese state-owned companies seized the opportunity, pouring more than $2 billion a year and hundreds of workers into Iraq, and just as important, showing a willingness to play by the new Iraqi government's rules and to accept lower profits to win contracts. China sees threat in U.S. pivot to Asia. At the informal summit meeting between President Barack Obama and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in California, both sides are trying to avoid the conflicts that can afflict relations between rising and established powers. China's main concern is that the new focus of U.S. foreign policy toward the Asia-Pacific region, this so-called pivot, is aimed at containing China's rise. Xi became president of China in March. This is his first visit to the United States as head of state. Though Washington has its own list of issues to discuss with Xi, at the top of Beijing's agenda is the U.S. pivot to Asia, which it sees as an attempt to prevent China from becoming a superpower. Senior U.S. officials have tried to reassure the Chinese that the pivot is not aimed at encircling China, as Beijing fears. The Hudson Institute's Michael Pillsbury also is a consultant to the Pentagon. In 8 major speeches now, everyone says this is not aimed at China, this is not about China. The only problem is, in ancient Chinese statecraft, they see this as the hegemon trying to reassure the rising power, but we Chinese are not so stupid as to believe this, but I think they should believe it. Battle over Bitcoin. China backs U.S. startup. 7 months ago, Fred Ehrsam pitched his Bitcoin-based startup Coinbase to more than a dozen Silicon Valley investors. Although those potential backers were known for being forward-thinking, and they had a lot of money to invest in high-tech ventures, Ehrsam got more than a few blank stares. He spent most of his time explaining the concept of peer-to-peer currency, which is emerging as the world's default platform for digital money, than he did describing his plans for the company itself. So, he and his co-founders turned to the Chinese, specifically, to IDG Ventures. To the Beijing-based venture capitalists, the PayPal-like service for buying, selling and accepting bitcoins was a perfect fit. They said, "We're sold on digital currency, we just want to know if you're the right people," Ehrsam told International Business Times, as he paced a San Francisco rooftop terrace on a recent windy afternoon. It was a very different starting point. Indeed, virtual currencies are nothing new to the Chinese. For example, more than 100 million people on the social platform QQ have used the Qcoin for more than 10 years. And after China's state-run China Central Television, or CCTV, ran a half-hour-long documentary on bitcoins, downloads of apps for processing and mining bitcoins soared in the world's second-largest economy. That's the China Report for today. Zaijian.